All right.
The lack of meaning in life is a soul sickness whose full extent and import our age has not yet begun to comprehend. Carl Jung. The pursuit of anime is an aim to explore philosophical topics through the medium of anime, to create discussion and to enlighten ourselves. We are by no means professionals, and the content of this podcast is pure discussion meant to stimulate and exercise our minds and hopefully yours too. So you're joined here by myself, Raven, and Teddy. We're your hosts for today.
Hello, hello.
Yeah. And the topic we're getting into today is basically how to find meaning in your life and kind of the different examples that this topic has in anime. I know for myself, this is definitely a very interesting topic, something that I often find myself talking to other people about. So I can just get into it right now with one of the concepts that I've thought a lot about, which is kind of the contrast or the differences between finding meaning in your life and simply searching for happiness. So, what I mean by that is, for example, Teddy, Teddy, you literally have a picture of some food on your, as your AVI right now. So, for example, someone who searches for happiness, let's say you've just gone through a breakup. What are the things you think about that you would do
Ye-
after you're broken up with? You grab a tub of ice cream. You grab the what is that on your profile picture? Actually, is that a croissant or something?
Yeah, yeah. It's like a bunch of pastries and stuff.
So you get those pastries, you'll get the burgers, you'll get like you just stuff your face in, right? And your body has the natural response of like pleasure, right? Like, oh man, this food tastes good in the moment, right? Or let's say, for example, a lot of people, right? They go through their daily jobs and they hate work. Let's say you're a manager at Chick-fil-A, or you work an office job where you're doing computer sciences or something like that, and you generally dislike work. You don't like your manager, you don't like your coworkers all that much, or maybe the work itself is just not that enthralling to you. Um, so you get home every night, or you get home on the weekends when it's finally your days off, and you smoke a joint. So you get high, you smoke that blunt, um, and as soon as the high wears off, then what? You're empty. A lot of people feel empty, right?
Mm.
So
Yeah.
that's the pursuit of happiness where yes, in the moment you're pursuing those things that kind of make you happy, but these are all momentary things. So what is the answer to that? Well, what I think is it's to pursue meaning. So while coffee and chocolate chip and cookie dough ice cream and weed and getting blasted on alcohol will make you happy, I don't think it will give you meaning. Now, what can give you meaning? Um, that's different for everybody. For myself, I know things that give me meaning are spending time with friends and family, improving on myself and my character, working on music, like things I'm passionate about, hobbies, just keeping myself in general active, and things of that nature. I find give me meaning and keep me grounded to where even though I work a job that I'm not necessarily happy working,
Mhm.
um, I still have meaning in my life because I know I have these things to look forward to and these things I'm working towards. Now, how do you feel about that, Teddy? How do you before we get into the anime kind of aspect to it and get into how anime answers this big question, how do you answer this question of finding meaning in life, and what do you think about that kind of contrast between finding happiness and finding meaning? Do you think it's valid, or do you think there is meaning in happiness? What do you think, Teddy?
I think that they go together. I think they go hand in hand. So what I mean by that is you're familiar with Aristotle, right?
Yeah.
So he had this idea that the purpose of human life is to find happiness. So everything that you do, whether it be meaningful or pleasurable, is ultimately for the final goal of finding happiness. So I'd say that even when you're partaking in more productive activities, like say you're playing a sport that you really like, or you have work, or even the examples that you gave, like spending quality time with friends, family, things of that nature. At the end of the day, whether subconsciously or consciously, what you're seeking is happiness. At least that's Aristotle's theory. I kind of agree with it to an extent, because I feel like there's a certain amount of fulfillment you get from doing those things, from partaking in those activities, where the only way that I can explain it is that I'm trying to get something out of it. And what I'm getting out of that is this sense of fulfillment, of happiness, like intrinsically, not because I'm doing it for like a particular purpose. No, it's just because doing this makes me happy, right? And I think it's a little bit different from when, say, you I guess you enjoy those pleasures that give you instant gratification, like food or weed or things of that nature, where it's a little bit different because you're not really actively doing anything. You're just getting pleasure from something directly. Where with the other ones, it's like you're making a conscious decision of taking steps towards achieving that state of happiness, right?
Yeah, I can definitely see that. There's actually this quote by Arthur Schopenhauer in The World as Will and Representation, where they say there is only one inborn error, and that is the notion that we exist in order to be happy. So long as we persist in this inborn error, and indeed even become confirmed in it through optimistic dogmas, the world seems to us full of contradiction. So it's a very interesting topic because obviously, like you pointed out, like Aristotle and I think even Plato had this kind of notion that we exist in order to be happy, and happiness is kind of this thing that's almost given to us by the gods or by fate or by destiny, and it's something that we all need to strive towards and hang on to. So while you have philosophers on that end of the spectrum, you also have philosophers kind of like on the opposite end of the spectrum where they're just like, no, like happiness is just not what you need to be looking for. You just need to be strictly looking for meaning. And I definitely do see what you're saying, where there should be a kind of a middle ground. It shouldn't just be day and night.
Let me ask you this. Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Even those people that say you should be strictly looking for meaning, why is that? What do you get out of finding that meaning or that specific purpose?
Well, I would say you get a fulfillment. You get like a fulfillment of your life. Whereas, for example, if you're searching for happiness, just to put it like simplistically, you're living for a dopamine or a serotonin hit. But when you're living for meaning, you're living for something that um, will kind of last, something that will fulfill a legacy, or things that last, as opposed to things that are temporary.
I
In a gen-
think, in a general sense, I think it depends on how you define happiness. Because for me, for example, when I do a good job at work, or when I'm in high demand, right? When people rely on me, that makes me happy, because I do get a sense of fulfillment out of it, but I also get that satisfaction of knowing, okay, you know what? People need me, or I'm good at what I like. Forget even the part of being needed, just doing a good job, something that I can have pride in, that makes me happy. So
yeah.
I think it depends on how you look at or how you define happiness. And I think even when focusing specifically on finding a purpose, that's also because in your own way, you're trying to find that happiness.
Mhm.
where it's not necessarily like, oh, I'm jolly, like, running through a field of roses or something like that. No, it's more so it's deeper within you. It's
Yeah.
a sense of, this is good. This is nice. I like this. It doesn't have to be a grand, over the top, like in your face, bombastic kind of feeling of happiness. It's just almost contentment, if you will.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting because that also is a thought that I've thought about often too, is where I understand both sides. Like I can see both sides. I definitely lean more towards the finding meaning argument. But at the same time, I've asked myself this question: what if somebody finds meaning in happiness? Then what would you say? Like for example, right?
Mhm.
We they're saying that you should not strive for happiness. You should just strive for whatever gives you meaning in life. But what if what gives me meaning in life is when I'm just sitting at home, happy with my family, eating dinner? You know, so it doesn't have to be this grandiose goal. And like I said before, it doesn't have to be this day and night thing where it's either one or the other. I think they both kind of, like you said, Teddy, go hand in hand. Um, but where I disagree with the fully like searching for happiness notion is that when you're just looking for a serotonin or dopamine hit, which I feel like a lot of the world is kind of stuck in. That's just the way that I feel. A lot of people, they just go through their Monday through Friday, then they go on the weekend and maybe like get high or they get absolutely blasted, and it's fun in the moment, but then afterwards they just feel empty inside, and we see a lot of depression happening in our society, and I think that this is kind of one of the reasons because we're not um, kind of searching for meaning in our lives. And of course, this is my kind of biased perspective on life itself, and of course, that's my projection that they are empty. There's going to be people that aren't empty, you know, working that 9 to 5 and just going to the club at the end of the weekend. There's going to be people that actually maybe find meaning in that, as we're discussing now. But I wanted to bring up this story. Yeah, I think it's kind of funny. I was in an Uber once, and this guy, the driver, he was asking me like what I did for a living and things like that. And at the time I was in college, and he was like, "Oh, wow, you're going to college. My son isn't going to college. Like he's basically a deadbeat." And I was like, "Oh man, I don't know what to say to that." And he was like, he asked me straight up. He was like, "You know, kids in your generation don't seem to really care about anything in life. Like, and you know, you seem interested in like learning and knowledge and everything. Like you seem like a smart person. What do you think is like the reason why we're here? What do you think is the meaning of life itself?" And I told him what I personally thought, of course, which you know, Teddy, and the people listening know by now. I think the meaning of life is to make your own meaning or to find meaning in it, right? Whatever that individual sense of meaning is, it's up to you to find. It's in your hands to find with the tools and the resources and this whole entire world and all these different experiences we can possibly have. I think it's our almost responsibility, if you can say that, to find it. And I told him that I just think the meaning of life is to find, to make your own meaning. Yeah. And he looked at me like I was crazy, and he was like, "Yeah, yeah, but what's the meaning then? Like you're saying it's to find your own meaning, but what's the meaning? Just tell me the meaning." And I'm like, I told him, "I can't tell you the meaning to your own life. That's for you to decide yourself. That's for you to kind of navigate through and find." What do you think about that, Teddy? Because I thought that was interesting. um he kind of almost had this sense of like, well, just want to be told what the meaning of life is. I don't want to have to find it, or I guess that's the sense I got in that moment. What do you think about that, Teddy? Would you agree with that, or do you have a different perspective?
See, he clearly has a lack of direction. It seems like he just goes through life trying to make ends meet doing what he believes is necessary for survival, but he doesn't have something to live for, right? Like, and I think he's not alone, right? Or not alone, but he's not in the minority in that situation where there are some people out there who don't have goals or aspiration, not because they don't want to have any, they just can't envision it at all, right? Those are the same people who can be very happy in a routine, monotone, mundane type of life
Yeah.
where they just go to work, come back from work, do the same thing every weekend, and then repeat, rinse and repeat every time. And they don't have something to live for, really, right? Like they don't have, and they don't aspire for anything. There's this guy, a Russian novelist. His name is Fyodor Dostoevsky. Dostoevsky, yeah. He says that the mystery of human existence lies not in just staying alive, but in finding something to live for.
Well,
And
yeah.
I think that applies to that Uber driver where there's he's living, but he's actually dead inside.
Yeah.
He just goes through the motions. That's the definition of going through the motions, where you don't have anything that sparks you, that gets you going, something that makes you wake up in the morning and make you look forward to the day, thinking, I can't wait to get my day started because I'm working towards something.
Yeah.
And having that sense of purpose is so essential to enjoying life to the fullest.
Mhm.
And that's why and that's why personally I was saying that even if happiness isn't the end goal we seek, through having that purpose, that meaning in life, you get your happiness out of it.
Yeah.
Where if I were to take away that purpose from you or that meaning, you essentially you just be like a hollow shell, and you be depressed because you have nothing to live for, right? So that's why, like, I struggle to separate the two the way that some theorists or some philosophers would, because I think they're trying to make it so that you can focus on a clear goal by saying that's the only that's the way you should aspire to live your life, is by finding that meaning, right?
Yeah.
But the way I see it is that it goes hand in hand. If you can't find meaning in life, you can't be happy. You're going to be like that driver, go through life waiting for somebody to save you, essentially, to tell you this is what you should aspire to do. This is, you know, maybe find a hobby, a passion, some kind of trade that makes you want to wake up in the morning. And
Yeah.
every time you go to sleep at night, it makes you look forward to the next day, right?
Yeah.
Because and people will listen to this and think that we're bashing people that go through life regular. No, if you find meaning in that, or if you find contentment in that, by all means feel free to discard what we're talking about. But I feel like my understanding of human nature makes it hard for me to believe that you can just go through life and not have that need for some kind of purpose, some kind of goal. This is one of the reasons why going to the gym, for example, is so addictive, is because you can always find something to strive towards. You can always find something to work for. It's like, oh, I lifted this much today. Let me see if I can lift more tomorrow. Or in a few weeks or a few months, something like that. Like there's always potential for growth
Yeah.
and change. And some people look at it in a negative light because they're like, so you're telling me you're never going to be satisfied? That sounds depressing. It's like, no, that's not what it means. Like I can be very happy with where I'm at now and still be not necessarily obsessed with the potential for more, but be curious
Mhm.
about the potential for more. It's like, I wonder, can I go this far? Can I do this? Can I do that? Right. And it's that constant state of wonder and thinking about the potential that keeps life exciting. And when you have something specific to live for, and it doesn't have to be like it's different for everybody. It could be something as simple as I want to own a house with a so and so, like however big backyard or things of that nature. Even if you never achieve it, you know how we always say the beauty is in the journey, not necessarily in the destination.
Yeah.
It's just like that because you're striving towards that goal. Like you even notice a lot of successful people after they achieve a certain level of success, they start looking for other endeavors because I feel like it's just in our psyche inherently to search for something.
Yeah. Well, Teddy, what do you think about this? Because there was this really popular journalist around kind of the era of the Hells Angels at their height, Hunter Thompson. He wrote this. He wrote, "When you were young, let us say that you wanted to be a fireman. I feel reasonably safe in saying that you no longer want to be a fireman. Why? Because your perspective has changed. It's not the fireman who has changed, but you. Every man is the sum total of his reactions to experience. As your experiences differ and multiply, you become a different man, and hence your perspective changes. So, we do not strive to be firemen. We do not strive to be bankers. We do not strive to be policemen nor doctors. We strive to be ourselves. The goal is absolutely secondary. It is the functioning towards the goal which is important." So, do you think that that's true, Teddy? Like, let's see. Let's bring this example, which I think is a really good example, actually. Look at Deku from My Hero Academia, right? What's one of the most compelling kind of scenes from that anime? When you see Deku as a kid, he's looking at All Might on the television, and he looks up to him so much, and he wants to be like All Might, but All Might is the strongest hero, and Deku is a kid who has no quirk. He has no latent superhero abilities. He has no superpowers, basically.
Mm, yeah.
So once he does inherit All Might's power, the one for all power, yeah, it doesn't end there. There's still work to be done. So I would say that the meaning in Deku's life was not just to become a hero, but then the goalposts changed, right? And he had to continue finding himself throughout the story, and he's still finding himself throughout the story, right? As he has this big decision to make towards the end goal, which I won't spoil for people who are watching the show or reading the manga. So do you agree with this notion that even though we have these big goals, the goals may not be the end all be all for ourselves. For example, with Luffy in One Piece, I'm sure you've heard people like kind of joke about the ending of One Piece, where people are saying like, "Well, the One Piece was the journey all along. You know, the journey, the the One Piece is the friends we made along the way." Stuff like that. Do you kind of see that um,
I
viable?
love that meme.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like I always hear people reference that and say that if that ends up being the case, they will riot. They'll be so mad. They'll be so upset. And I think to myself, I get it. I would understand if it were a shorter story. We've been at it for 24, 25 years now. I need a proper conclusion. You will not bait me with, oh no, the treasure is the friends we made along the way. Nah, nah, I don't know. I don't want that. Um, but I think it's interesting with Luffy because he has that mindset of I'm happy as long as I'm working towards that goal. And even if I don't achieve it, just knowing that I did everything in my power to achieve it is enough for me. Remember in Logtown when Buggy finally got his hands on Luffy,
Yeah,
and at the scaffold he was about to behead Luffy, but then he got saved, right? Remember Luffy's face?
yeah,
He was smiling. Why? Because he was thinking to himself, "Hey, look, man, at least I tried,
yeah. I mean,
even if I didn't." Yeah,
he literally said, "Oh well, guess I'm dead."
yeah, yeah. Essentially, he was laughing about it because in his mind he's thinking, "I'm working towards my goal, and if I die in the process, and so be it. At least
Yeah,
I can say that I spend my energy towards something that I really wanted."
hmm,
And I feel like that should be the case for everybody in life,
yeah,
because that's what makes you look forward to the next day. That's what makes you look forward to the day when you're waking up. And I think I don't mean to sound like a therapist and diagnose people, but I feel like a lot of the depression and self-deletion that happens in our modern times, they come from that lack of a purpose, that lack of something that's worth living for. Because that's the thing with a lot of people, they just don't have that. And because they don't have that, they wake up in the morning thinking, but why should I bother? Like, what's the point?
yeah.
And when you find yourself asking that question, that's when you know there's a problem.
And Nietzsche has a really good quote about that, where he says, "He who has a why can bear almost any how."
Yes,
I'm
that's
sure.
exactly right.
Yeah.
Yep.
And Teddy, there's this character. There's a few characters actually in anime that kind of fall into this category, but Saitama's one of them, right? Where he's kind of going through life, and I mean, there almost is no why because he is just so strong that it's almost ridiculous, right? So like when he's training, like there's no need to train anymore because he's already reached kind of the pinnacle. Whereas like with other overpowered characters, right? Like Goku, for example, he's overpowered in his verse, but at the same time, there's villains and threats that keep coming that
Are
are
always more powerful. Yeah.
yeah. So but Saitama doesn't have that. So he's definitely kind of gone through a lack of meaning, especially during the beginning of the series where he's almost apathetic to his life and to the world um because he's so strong.
And that's
Yeah.
funny because the only thing that keeps him alive is the hope that maybe one day somebody will show up that can challenge him on an equal footing. And he, in a way, he reminds me of those people that I was talking about earlier who achieve a lot of success in their lives where they need to switch to something else.
Yeah.
And you remember that conversation he had with King, where King was like, "Well, yeah, in terms of just raw power output, I don't think you're gonna find your match in this lifetime. So maybe it's time that you start focusing on other things like what it means to be a hero beyond just punching the bad guys."
Yeah.
Right? Because right now you could argue that Saitama's approach to being a hero is very simplistic. He just thinks, I need to show up and destroy the villain. wherever it's needed. But there's more to that. I mean, you even see it in the first season where uh, when that meteor is about to fall on a city, he destroys it. But through destroying it the way that he did, it creates a lot of collateral damage around him, right? And then you got the whole thing where the residents of the city start blaming him for all the damage when really they should be thanking him because without him the whole place would have been evaporated, right?
Yeah.
But it's things like that where you see that he can still find something to strive for beyond just finding somebody that can give him that rush of dopamine that he's looking for through a fight.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
that's true. And I think like meaning in life takes many different forms, and I don't think that one is superior to another. For example, in Naruto, you have Naruto himself, right? He wants to be Hokage, and this is a big, huge aspiration. And once he does finally reach it, it's a big kind of fulfillment for the audience, for Naruto. And I feel like a lot of us can resonate with Naruto, where a lot of us do have these big aspirations and big goals. But what about the Iruka senseis of the world, right? Iruka's a pretty fulfilled looking dude, and he doesn't seem to really aspire to being Hokage or anything huge or, beating Madara. But he served his role in the story as a great almost like parental figure and friend to Naruto, this Hokage. So there's also meaning in being supportive to others. There's meaning in just living a simple life as well too. I think that that's important to highlight. Where um, I don't think any one of these walks of life is superior to one another. It's whatever gives you meaning. That's I think something to drive home as well. The individuality of this what meaning entails in your life.
so let me ask you this then. Um, because it's something I'm genuinely curious about because I can't necessarily relate in that aspect. I mean, sure, I also one of my goals in life is to, be in a place where say I don't have to worry about finances, where everything is taken care of. I got my own place and everything. That's a goal of mine. But I want to ask you this because maybe you'll be able to break this down to me better so I can understand it. Do you genuinely believe that you can be content just getting quote unquote the bare minimum out of life, which is, no drama, the perfect uh, um, circle of family and friends and all that? Like just living a good life. Do you think that in itself is enough?
Oh yeah, for sure. I feel like my experience um kind of lends itself to big aspirations because I grew up kind of in the slums. I grew up in not a good household. I did not grow up well off at all, right? So when I
Mhm.
see people living well off lives and I see like celebrities, I kind of identify that with success and happiness and fulfillment as a kid, right? So that's why I have these big aspirations. That's why I want to work on music. I want to make like pop music. I have these big aspirations, and I feel like I've cultivated that within myself, right? And I'm happy for that, right? But I was talking to somebody else the other day, this woman that she's from Italy, and she was telling me like, well, I we were talking about New Yorkers, right? She was asking
Yes.
if I was born and raised in New York, and I was like, yeah, 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 for sure. And she was like, wow, like the life in New York, from what I've noticed, is so different from life in Italy. And I asked her, what do you think is the biggest difference between a New Yorker and an Italian in the way they view and live their lives, right? And I knew a big answer was coming because she took a big kind of inhale and exhale, She
Oh, that's how we're about to go in. Yeah.
She leaned back and she was like, "Okay, I'm glad you asked this because I'm about to start cooking." And, Italians can cook, so she told me this. She told me, "Listen, you people in America, you are focused on these big kind of bombastic aspirations in life, and it seems that work is a big part of your life. Work, making money, climbing the kind of monetary
The corporate ladder and all that, or the social status ladder. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big part of your life here in America. In Italy, that does not matter at all. It is an aspect, there are people that do it, but in Italy, the most important thing in life, she was telling me as an Italian and as from her experience, she was telling me that as an Italian, what's most important is family, the day to day. Sitting down for dinner, lunch, and breakfast with your family every day and sitting for hours with them talking, just drinking wine, eating pasta, breaking bread with others.
Mhm.
That is the highlights of not just every day, not just every week, but that is the highlights of life. And
So they find fulfillment and contentment and happiness in that, right? That's
yeah,
their meaning.
yeah, and just simply sitting down, breaking bread with family and friends. So
You see,
I
yeah.
definitely do see like I definitely do see that kind of I feel like culture affects it and upbringing affects it because I definitely do think that if I grew up in that environment, I do think I would have a different perspective on life where maybe I don't see kind of becoming rich, becoming famous as kind of a fulfillment. I would just see a point where maybe I could just buy a house, have a car, and be able to invite my family over.
Mhm.
That would be the end all be all for me if I was in that position. But the position I'm in now is obviously a less fortunate position. I was not fortunate
Mhm.
at all. Like I'm sure you've heard this study. Like we come from water and cornflakes, so it's just a different story. When you,
Yeah.
yeah, when you
When you
come
come from a place of struggle, you have a greater hunger for success on a larger scale than when you're not from that kind of background. I agree. No, I understand. So then you would definitely resonate with what I was saying earlier, where um, you know, I can see why certain people would focus on just finding a like having a very clear aspiration or clear purpose in life and following that versus just trying to be happy. But you see, like with that example, based on Italian culture, the two go hand in hand.
yeah, yeah,
You know, your happiness comes from what you personally deem to be meaningful, which is a quality time with family, friends, and all that. I'm glad you shared your experience with me because it I feel like you would resonate greatly with characters like Naruto or Asta,
oh yeah.
Black
Growing
Clover,
up,
because they were the circumstances they were given made them have to aspire for greatness. I wouldn't say necessarily made them, because part of that is also your natural predisposition, because
yeah,
not everybody in the same circumstances come to the same conclusions and
yeah,
behave the same way, right? They just chose to rise above
yeah,
their circumstances and say, you know what? If you since you can't acknowledge me now, I will make you acknowledge me. You
yeah,
won't be able to look away because I will shine so bright. Like I'll be at the top, whether it be Hokage or you know the Wizard King. Like I'll be at the top, and you'll see me.
yeah. Your experiences, I feel like, can nudge you in a certain direction, but ultimately, it's you that has to take the step, whether you want to or not. You can
Yeah,
definitely resist it and go the other way. But me growing up, I definitely like Naruto was my favorite character. Naruto was my favorite shonen. When it came to Bleach, um,
that's
Naruto,
why I find it so funny that you like Bleach as much as you do. Because if there's a character like a MC who is the antithesis of what you're about, it's probably Ichigo.
yeah, yeah, because he grew up kind of like with it. I mean, he did not have his mom, and that was obviously like that played a big role in him. He was definitely like going through a lot of
it was a hardship for sure. Yes.
yeah, and I definitely resonated with that too. I think Bleach I love as a story more, but when it comes to what I connected with as a kid, as a young boy growing up, it was definitely Naruto.
Right.
Because like Dragon Ball Z I find cool because you know the powers and
I
everything.
mean, but yeah, but that's just like that's
Yeah,
pure fantasy world. So it's not. I don't think a Dragon Ball Z is meant to be relatable at all.
yeah, exactly. So that's just kind of the way that it was for me, you know?
No, I get it, and that's I think that's one of the appeals of those types of stories is that from rags to riches type of story where you get to see someone rise from the ashes essentially, and you get to go on their journey. And that's why Naruto is one of the most beloved stories in anime, because he achieved his goal at the end of the day. You know, he became a Hokage.
He did, yeah.
And
And I feel
we
like that's why a lot of people resonate less with Boruto because Boruto didn't come from that same background, so inherently, like people are gonna resonate a bit less with that, right? Like people are gonna resonate with like Deku, Naruto, Asta when you see them, right? Of course, Deku kind of has like a bit of personality traits that I personally don't like and some people don't like, but generally speaking, right? Like their backstory and coming from nothing and becoming something, people are
Mhm.
gonna resonate with these guys and less with kind of like Boruto's and things like that. Now, of course, stories are stories, and if the story is good, it's gonna be damn good, and people are gonna watch it either way. You know, whether they come from riches or rags. Look at Overlord, Ainzu Lugaon. Man starts at the top, and you know you kind of go through the story there.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's interesting because, as you said, there's just other stories where it's not necessarily like the main character isn't necessarily trying to achieve anything grand. Like, look at somebody like Tanjiro from Demon Slayer. He's
Yeah,
just trying to restore his sister, all right, and he finds himself having to slay a lot of demons in order to achieve that. Like that's the path that he was given towards his goal. But it's not a grand goal in any way, shape, or form. It's just I care about my sister. I believe she can be restored. So that's why I'm doing everything that I'm doing. One thing that I do not like about his story is that, because the way I see it, when you have a goal in life, or when you have a purpose, you need to have a plan as well. You can't just say, "Oh, this is what I want to do," because a dream without a plan to achieve it is pointless, in my opinion. Because it'll just always be that. It'll always just be a dream because you don't have like a plan of action to
yeah,
reach it, right? And that's where I struggle with Tanjiro as a character, because he's he wants to restore his sister, but he doesn't have any idea how. He just believes it's possible.
yeah,
And through that sheer belief, yes, things do end up working out in his favor at some point, but it's, I personally believe, very unrealistic, and not, I don't
not
know. It just, it doesn't really make much sense, in my opinion, that you just say, "Oh, this is what I want happening," but you don't take any steps towards that. So you're just hoping that it eventually will happen. It's like saying, "Oh, I want to be a millionaire one day," and hope that a winning lottery ticket will accidentally fall into your lap, and then you go and you become like, how likely is that?
yeah. It's very unlikely when there's
Yeah.
actual steps you could take. Like for example, like putting away like a couple thousand a year into an index fund and then letting it grow over the years and I think there's statistics. I forgot the exact statistic, but in 20 years you would have to put a certain amount in into that index fund and you would have $1 million. I'm not sure if it's like 100 or a few hundred a week, but But yeah, there's ways to actually go about growing wealth that don't involve blowing all your money on lottery tickets. But Teddy, I think you touched on a good point, which is like kind of going blind through this search for meaning or through this like search for a goal or even going blindly to through the goal itself. There's a lot of people that might say like, well, I don't know what the meaning in my life is. I don't know what I find meaning in life. So if you were kind of blinded in your own life, Teddy, and you, let's say you started from zero and didn't know what your meaning in life was, what you wanted to do with your life, how would you go about finding it? How should one go about finding meaning in life, do you think, Teddy, when if considering that they don't know?
That's a very good question because it's like that Uber driver you were talking about earlier. Like he just have no clue how to go about it.
He's clueless.
Um, yeah.
Oh man.
And I guess I'll use my personal experience because growing up, I struggled with that too as a kid. I remember everybody around me, they had a clear career path they wanted to follow. I didn't have that. All I knew is that I liked having money. And so I was like, anything that I can do to make that happen, I'll make it happen. Right. Somewhere along the way though, I had to learn. I had to think about, okay, um what is it? Like you have to do a lot of self exploration to come to that conclusion, but even that is not enough. You need to be exposed to the world. You need to be around other people where through interactions you may discover something about yourself. But that's the thing is it needs to be an active kind of process. It needs to be, you need to be aware. It needs to be a conscious effort to find that because for me, I lacked vision a lot as a teenager. Even when I came to the US and started studying, going to school, I was the very definition of just going through the motions. I did have my passions like anime, for example, but because I grew up watching anime all the way from back home. So I came here with that already. Outside of that, when it comes to career, like what you want to do, my father decided for me what he thought I should do. I remember uh my parents kind of going back and forth on what they believe should be my major and career path in life. My mom, she wanted me to be an engineer in some way, shape, or form. My father wanted me to work in business, to be a businessman, which in hindsight is extremely vague because what does that mean? What does that entail? Does that mean I'm just like wearing a suit and going to meetings, but meetings for what? Right. So that was something that I had to find once I started taking classes in business management, HR, all that stuff. Okay, so there's different departments. You're not just a random businessman. Like you need to work in, you know, accounting, HR, all different departments, right? And different industries to take into account as well.
Yeah.
But even then, still, I didn't have a clear vision. I graduated and I was like, I started looking for work. And when you say that you have a major, uh, or you have a degree, a bachelor's degree in business management, it's very broad, right? So it's like you're kind of a jack of all trades, but at the same time, you don't have a clear skill set that can be capitalized on, right?
Hmm.
So that's where a lot of self exploration came in. I had to think back on my high school days and I had to try and remember what made me tick. What was it that really made me excited, made me happy? And through everything that I could think of, I remembered numbers, math. working with numbers was something that brought a lot of satisfaction and meaning to me. And that's how I ended up going into accounting. And then one thing led to another, found a job in accounting, and the rest is history. But it's something where if you lack that vision, you first of all you need to acknowledge that, right? You need to acknowledge that you're unable to see a clear path for yourself, and then after that you need to look for those strengths that you have, or those I guess affinities
Yeah.
that you may have, right? Even talking about something completely unrelated to work on that stuff. Before I go into my story, I want to ask you, how did you get into boxing?
To boxing, I got into that in high school. It was like a kind of a group that was into MMA, boxing, and I ended up joining them. Just ended up joining them and doing that after school. So it's kind of more like an after school club activity. You could think of it that way.
So it was just kind of like by accident that you kind of got into it.
Kind of like on a whim. Like I think my like when it comes to me, my answer to like how to find meaning in life when you don't know what your meaning is to always be trying something new. So if you have never tried, let's say, crochet or baking or all types of sports, tennis, there's so many sports you can try out, right? Or you've never tried dancing before, you never learned how to swim. Try all of these things because you never know, you might stumble upon a passion that you never knew or even thought or dreamed you would have had. For example, in Hajime no Ippo just randomly ends up kind of going to this boxing gym one day. Of course, circumstances lead to it, but just a condensed version, he ends up going to this boxing gym and he realizes he loves it, kind of almost randomly, right? So it's like life is kind of like that sometimes. It's very strange in the sense that you can really just stumble upon a life passion from one day to another. But
You really can, and
yeah,
I'm glad you're saying. Oh, I'm gonna let you finish your thought. I don't want to cut you off.
yeah, but you won't be able to do that if you're just not trying anything new. If you're just stagnant waters, just maybe staying home all day, doing
Mm.
nothing. Of course, if you find meaning in that already, by all means, go ahead. But
And that's what I'm saying, right? Some people will argue that you can find meaning in that. I
yeah,
disagree. I feel like it you would feel something missing in your life if you
yeah,
do that, and you won't even know what it is until you go out there. And to your point, when you say, oh, you have to try different things, I'll go one step further or back depending on how you look at it, and I'd say you might not even need to try it. You might just need to witness it, and something in you will click,
yeah, yeah.
right? Because for me, how I got into tennis, do you know how that was? It's a funny story. So I had a group of friends back in high school who I thought they were the coolest dudes ever. Everything about them I sought to emulate one way or another. I was like, yo, these people, they're so freaking cool. And one of them used to play tennis. Like that was his extracurricular activity outside of school. So I got interested because I thought he was so cool. I have no shame in admitting it. I was like, oh my gosh, he's so freaking cool. I need to learn why he enjoys tennis. So I started watching it, and somewhere along the way, I realized, hey, yo, I actually really like this sport. Let me go ahead. And then I started playing it. I was like, oh, I don't just like this sport. I love this sport.
Yeah.
And I just ever since then I've been all about it. I'm a little bit of a tennis nut now. Like it's damn near an obsession. And that's my experience. Maybe other people they'll need to try multiple things before they find what they like. With me, I just, I witnessed it once looked into it a little bit more, and next thing I knew, I just couldn't get enough of it. So, but the common denominator in everything we're saying now, though, is you need to go out there. You need to put yourself out there. If you don't have that inherent way of finding a purpose in life, like you need to go out there to find it.
Yeah,
Uh,
and I'll definitely say this as a kind of a closing thought because I think we covered a lot, and I think this is probably just going to be a part one because I think we could go for another hour just talking about how you can find meaning. But if you don't have a natural predisposition towards a specific area or a specific career path or a specific kind of goal in life, definitely get out there and try new things. Try whatever it is, cooking. If you don't know how to cook, if you're the type of person that only knows how to boil an egg, and make some rice in a rice cooker, try cooking. You might notice that you actually love it because there's so much creativity that goes into cooking, right? And individuality that can shine through cooking. And I think this is the case for many things, right? Sports, dance. There's even bird watching, fishing. You know, things that that kind of tie into wildlife and getting out there, like Teddy's saying, running, jogging, even just sightseeing, traveling. I know there's so many people they love traveling. When they go to their first country, they're like, "Wow, I can't believe like I haven't been doing this my whole life. I love traveling." So definitely try new things and get out there and I think I hope this video has been insightful and thoughtful and kind of spark some new ideas and maybe even for some people given them the nudge to kind of think about this sort of thing because I know that for a lot of time growing up I didn't think about what the meaning of life was. I was just going through day by day and just trying to be as happy as possible with random dopamine hits until one day I just had to question myself and ask myself, man, why am I living right now? What is my goal? But with that,
Oh,
with
I just wanted to add like
yeah,
one final thought real quick because this the nature of these conversations, they stimulate the mind, they make me refer back to previous conversations we've had. You remember when we talked about uh how sometimes you need to create the circumstances for you to grow?
yeah,
I'm thinking this relates to this as well. You need to I feel like for a lot of people, they need to create the circumstances for them to get that purpose in life. Because like in your example, or in people like or characters like Naruto or Asta, whatever, they were given their circumstances to find the purpose in life, right?
hmm,
But maybe a lot of people who lack that vision, part of it is because they didn't grow up in an environment that made them look for that. But then again, it's always that whole thing about nature and nurture, where you can still be given the circumstances and not finding in you to, you know, gain some kind of purpose out of it. So it really just depends at the end of the day. But yeah, man, this, like you said, this is probably we're probably gonna revisit that in a different form further down the road.
yeah. We'll definitely probably do like a how to find meaning in life stream, just more specifically tackling how you can kind of go about this process and how we've been going about it. And I think that would be interesting to kind of get into. And I'm sure there's a bunch of anime characters in the process themselves that would be interesting to look at. So yeah,
Yeah.
thank you to everybody who's tuned in and watched and who will watch after the fact. Thank you, Teddy, for joining me in this conversation. This was a great one. I think I like this a lot.
Oh yeah, and I really hope this is one thing too. Like I guess we haven't mentioned in previous episodes, but I hope that through our conversations, you personally can get something out of it that carries you, if not through your life, at least through the day or the week. So
Yeah, for sure. Because podcasts have definitely done that for me. So hopefully this can be a podcast that's a good place for some people. But with that, we will bring you another one soon next week, and we have some shorts coming out. So check those out if you haven't seen them, and we will catch you on the next one. Peace.
Peace.